Hello, well, Frida Reba Darcy and Patricia O'Connor here today on the Bonsai Balcony. It is December 20 some odd. We're in between our holiday days and we are surviving it nicely. It's a interesting looking day on the balcony and we're going to do a little tour. We're going to it's kind of an interesting time. I had a question yesterday on one of our shows, and in looking at the answer to that, I decided to roll back a little bit, roll back and look at some of our past shows so that I could better answer the question. And I found the answer personally surprising. And then I did a little, and I've been kind of watching some of our other stuff, Frida. And I've been kind of watching some of her. She's kind of wandered off because I missed my mark. Anyway, somebody asked how long had it been on these trees since they had their flat chop. And the answer to that question, the short answer, is 4 years. Also, I am amazed that it has been 4 years. I would say I have done some things to maybe throw us a little behind in the early going, but only in the early going and not for very long. When we first started, I probably spent the first year trying to style the trees. The first summer when everything came out, I made them look like formal upright shapes, and that really, what that encompassed was cutting out a lot of the foliage for just the groomed foliage stuff, the every other branch thing. And that's kind of a no-no because what we are is we have trees in development. And even though when they leaf out and stuff, you can almost, like doing a comb over, not notice all those heavy stuff when it has full leaf. In reality, we have a long way to go, and we can either do that in a timely manner, or we can drag that out. So by not pruning these trees back from their spring growth, we are trying to accelerate the amount of time it takes those guys to develop. I'm going to come swing back around to my mark and pay up. Okay. So, and in my explanation, the question was how long it had been since these guys, when I bought this tree and when I bought this tree, they both already had these angle cuts. And since then, I have ground both of these down and hollowed them out and done some carving to both of them over the last couple of years in that 4 years. They had just both recently gotten those cuts, so just prior to my being mailed to me, they had received that angle cut. Now, that was 4 years ago. So in that time, I did this tree. I took delivery of this tree, and it had a flat cut right here. The videos are still out there. Just right after I got it, this was a shoot that came out here, and this area was a shoot that came out. That came out here. So I had a top that was kind of doing that. Excuse me. And even though I could pull those in, and I did try pulling them in, they were going to banana out because they had both started going out that way. And I made a decision early that if I ever saw a sprout develop, and I probably would, you see sprouts develop at the bases of a lot of these guys. Sometimes just put out a whole bunch of profusely put out little sprouts. So I thought, when we get one that's close centered over this part, we may nurse that and let it go and let it take over in lieu of what's there. And the very first year that we had this, that I had cut this notch at the base that came up right here, this sprout came up right there, and I went, that's the guy if that survives on into spring. And it did, and we cut that one back. And then I thought, this will do the same thing, and we'll do the same thing. A year rolled by, nothing. Another year rolled by, nothing. And about the time I thought, well, this is the last time, because it's going to be kind of too late in the game to have those that far apart. and then a sprout appeared, which was this guy, at the base of a leader that was way out here. So by going with this, by wiring this up, letting it survive, and started pruning this imaginary leader now back, I was able to then start carving all of this back too. And this leader is more nicely centered over this half, and this leader, 2 years older, is more nicely centered over that half. I didn't really plan this by design, but whenever I'm looking at it, it would be the other way. Whenever I'm looking at it like this, the skinnier tree will be the one in front, so it won't be totally eclipsing the slightly fatter tree behind. I think that's kind of more noticeable there, but this isn't necessarily the front. Should be thinking about it in a future setting. Even if that were the front, we still will be able to see the slightly thicker trunk behind. Hopefully we'll have a little bit more taper going on then. Also, every couple of years, I chop these back to try to accelerate the growth and keep everything going from here to there. And you can see this throughout these trees. Here's one chop. Here's another chop. This was another chop. And this was the original leader that this tree came with. This tree came to me, was the first one that I ordered. And it came to me 3 weeks late. Literally the delivery guy, after the tree was AWOL, after nobody could tell what had happened to the tree, after nobody knew what happened to the tree, after the insurance had already been paid, and this tree was already delivered. This thing, it was a knock at the door, and somebody just dropped it at the door and hauled ass. And that was it was covered in mud, and every leaf on it was dead. But I was told to defoliate it and put it in the shade and water it. And I did that, and it bounced back immediately and showed no signs of ill health. So that's how that worked out. And I ended up with, this was actually, one of these three was actually going to be a much smaller tree. And it ended up being this compilation because of that. Here you can see examples where we've done our prune back and turned and vipricated off all of our branches, and we kind of have that going for us. Last year with our chainsaws and stuff, we scooped out a lot of this to enable that rollover, which was really good. Fronts. You know, I don't really tend to talk about the fronts of trees a whole lot. In fact, I think probably the last couple of times I've mentioned the front of a tree, maybe I would say after our rotated tree, this is the back of the tree, or this is, not the front of the tree. But there are a couple of examples where it's absolutely obvious. I think whenever I'm looking at my California coastal oak here, that the hollow feature would denote that as being the front. When it comes to this ponderosa, this is one of those trees where I say I don't have a bad side here. I have great sides and I have greater sides. No, really, this tree has a lot to love, I think. I'm a little jaded by that, but also we're about to go some huge stalling changes, so it's a little early. Lucky, I think I have a lot to go with, but whenever you have multiple choices, sometimes go with where's your widest base. What angle gives you the widest base? That usually accounts for more than one on a scale of a little grading scale to decide what your front is. Your widest base would be a 3 or a 4 by itself, and the other things would be a 1, a 1, a 1, a 1 kind of a deal. So that's kind of what's going on there. This is a quick look at the graft that took place. The graft that's green and appears to have taken is still thriving. The others, kind of like the old joke about King Faisal, the others are still dead. I think with one graft we could be a go, but we'll probably do a couple of more, but we get to treat it like a grafted tree now. And with every graft on there that takes, we're more and more out of the woods for that being a possible ponderosa in a climate where it is not suited. So hopefully what we're dealing with right now is a lot of rain and a lot of wind. And for that reason, I have brought a lot of the smaller ponderosas and some of the black pines off of the rail. So we've got our guys are still hanging out in substrate, but they're a little bit farther away from, they're a little bit better out of the wind, I think is what I'm trying to say. And I believe that they are. So that's kind of how we're looking there. This is a quick look at all of our little Mame black pines. This is one of the ones I was saying looked purple. It's already starting to look less purple, but it got super, super cold. That's because I probably had it out in the elements after a repot, and that was a nose. Good color, right? Am I wrong, or is that some really beautiful colors against that blue? That's our Trident maple finally giving us some nice colors. I'm looking down in there, everything's still wet, so I think that's pretty good. I don't think I have anything drying out there. I'm concerned about this. I haven't watered this tree in a month, the amount of rain that we have. Hopefully our cold snap means that it's kind of dormant, and because it's not taking up water, and we sure are getting a lot of it. So that's also kind of makes your pines can get a little yellow, so I'm seeing some of that, but all in all, this is our 20-year from seed. This was from a local bonsai garden. It's looking fantastic. Now, just a little quick thing. This tree has a fantastic base. Look at that base. Oh my God, look at that base. That's just like so much base right there. You know, that is great technique, and something that somebody else who is this was technique done by Jonas at Bonsai Tonight. I acquired this tree from him several years ago. It was a 17-year from seed, now it's a 20-year from seed, and I need to go through here with chopsticks and remove some old needles. But it's a gorgeous looking tree and it's in good health. This is another tree that I got from his garden, and it is a 75, now 80-year-old cork bark Japanese black pine. Also, I should probably do a little bit of cleanup, but this is the time of year where you also see your pines looking a little bit yellow. But I'm kind of getting off track. I watched a video last night that reminded me, it just started to rain again. I was watching a video last night, it just popped up on my feed from somebody who is another local bonsai artist, and I have gotten numerous good ideas from Eric at Bonsai. I have bought trees from Eric, and I have bought some of Eric's little unglazed pots in the past. My $50 challenge tree came from Eric, and when I bought a show hen at the Bonsai Expo, that was one of Eric's trees also. So I've been a follower of his and a fan of his products to some extent, and a big believer in his shipping. I mean, because he's also in the Bay Area where I am. Really, really, really quick. But he did a show last night where he talked about a technique for getting really long roots. And Japanese black pine roots, clank with the camera. That was just the camera banging up against metal, nothing to worry about here. This was a root, not was, is. This is a root. This is a root. This was the trunk. These, ancient Chinese secret, these were the root base. They were teased and fanned out, and they have fused, and that is how you get, in this instance, a super, super wide base. Hips to die for on a Japanese black pine. Now, what's not apparent is what they did to do that. Whenever you see somebody growing something in a colander, and then the pine tree is maybe growing in some sort of substrate that's been put in a tube and wired to sit up straight in said colander, or maybe they do that also. They might would do that also in a glazed pot. I mean, in like a garden pot. Let's see, like a garden pot. Like, see those guys? Whenever you see that, that's somebody trying to get really, really long roots, which you can get in a year or two. And then once you uncover those guys can become those guys. They will make bark. You can then twist them. You can then make them look like spider legs, so that a tree is hanging off of a cliff any way you want to by these legs that will then get bark. Or you can kind of leave them bundled and fan them out and watch them fuse and become a figure. Just a, that's the stuff right there. So I see us doing that. I see us doing that, and I've been thinking about it a little bit. But now, having watched this show last night, I was like, yeah, that's what we're gonna do. But I didn't, rather than just say, I'd already been thinking about it, I'm just gonna go ahead and own it. I'm totally ripping this off from Eric at Bonsai, and not only that, but I'm going to include a link to the show that I'm talking about. So maybe you'll see some of the, you'll get some of the enthusiasm that I gained from just watching that show. And basically what it is he was growing his trees in tubes. They were just like plastic tube. It almost looked like plastic guttering or something, right? Because it was squares about maybe this big around, but they were square tubes that would have been easy to cut loose, because that's what he had to do. You wouldn't, I thought about doing that out of PVC or something, but then you would have a hard time getting those roots out of that once it was grown, once you wanted to extract it. So it would have to be something that I could come apart, like screen. So get ready for that. I'm giving a little lead in. I'll probably pick out a worthy victim tonight for Saturday night live bonsai, and then we'll just go headlong into that idea, and that's something I'm really looking forward to. This guy's got some fantastic roots already. It's just some things to think about. Anyway, this is a little tour on December 7th, 8th, 28th. I'm gonna go with 28th. And I appreciate you, Frida, appreciates you. And our next drop will be you'll probably see that one before this one. It'll be tonight when we do Saturday Night Live Bonsai. After that, we'll probably come back around. We'll probably come back around for our Wednesday drop. That'll be exciting. Crash New Year's. I did a Christmas tree, which is to say, I did a tree on Christmas. Here we go. This is one of the trees that we put motion in. We did this in the rush. We did a video where we just put wire around 10 trees in about 20 minutes. And I wired that up, and that would be our Christmas 2024 tree. A little quick look at this guy. I always love to stop and see how this guy's looking. I chopped those needles back some. They were looking a little big, but you can see how those tips look. That's what they look like when you cut them. Some people will say if you cut them with sharp scissors, they don't look like that. Those were new sharp scissors. Anyway, that's all I was looking at that little guy. So I moved all of these guys out of the wind, and this is where my Fukin tea got. I gotta say, I'm pretty excited about that color coming in a little late in the game. but that color is good. Pretty much the color on everybody else is what we would expect. Going back and looking at the trees that we had done, at some of these trees that we've had for a number of years, and seeing how have already changed in 4 years. One, it was a reminder that we're 4 years old, and I would not have thought that. I would not have thought that. It's been fun, and yeah, I just wouldn't have thought that. And the other thing I've decided is I'm right to let this guy grow out longer. What I could see was what I got of the tree, even though it was in need of some repair, it had been grown longer, and I can see what those guys had been doing before COVID may have caused it to get underwater. I could see the tree they were building, and I kind of can see why now that I'm 4 years down the pike. I kind of see what they were doing. So yeah, that's cool there. Also, when we talk about fronts of trees, this is the front of this tree, and that's it was one of those trees that I thought looked good from any side. That guy to me looks equally good from either side. The cork bark definitely has a front. This literati definitely has a front. My forest, I would say, definitely has a front. And when this becomes something more to look at than a train wreck, it will definitely have a front to it. As I think these guys here, I'd always said this guy looks good from any angle, but it's bowing this way. It comes at us this way. So that means it's kind of bowing at us this way, which would be, excuse me, which would be an appropriate front. And an example of what I think is more appropriate for stuff growing out longer. All right, like and subscribe if you guys haven't already. I appreciate you. Frida appreciates you. And we will see some of you in a little while for Saturday night live bonsai, where we're going to do some pine work. We're going to set up a pine tree for the future. That should be fun. And thank you all so much for watching.